Fire, floods, and tornadoes. Oh my. Hello again, this is Angie Ottercrans. I am a nursing student at Indiana State University in their BSN program, bringing you another video in my video series that is based off of the Healthy People 2020 goal of improving the health, function, and well-being of the older adult. Today we are going to look at emergency preparedness for the older adult. Here we go. All right, let's start by looking at some learning objectives that I hope that you are able to accomplish after this video. I hope that you can identify the emergencies and disasters that can affect the older adult, determine the reasons that being prepared for a disaster and emergency is important for the older adult, and list and plan and supplies that are needed for the older adult in preparation for an emergency or disaster. As always, let's take a pretest to test the knowledge that we already have in this area. Please pause this video and copy the link in the description below to access the test. As always, the answers are at the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. All right, how'd you do? Did you find that you had most of the answers correct? Great. Did you find that you hoped you did better than you did? No problem. Let's go ahead and look into this area further and gain some information. So, why is being prepared for an emergency so important for the older adult? There are multiple emergent situations, natural and man-made, that can affect the older adult more intensely than the rest of the population. Let's go ahead and look at some of these. So we know that emergencies can affect older adults more intensely. So how many older adults are actually prepared for a disaster or emergency? Let's look at what we find. According to a poll that was done by the University of Michigan, many older adults said they were prepared for a disaster emergency, but the poll had found that many lacked the adequate preparation. When you look at older adults aged 50 to 80, 82% said they did have a 7-day supply of the medications. Only 55% said they had a 7-day supply of food and water. 44% said they signed up to receive emergency alerts, and 40% said they've already talked with a family or friend about evacuation. So they think they're prepared, but maybe not adequately. Now that we know how many older adults are not fully prepared adequately, one may ask, why is being prepared so important for the older adult? According to the American Psychological Association, fatalities, injuries, and damage can be minimized with adequate planning of the older adult in an emergent and disaster situation. So adequate planning is important for the older adult in a disaster and emergent situation. What sort of preparation does the older adult need to do? There are some basics that the older adult will need to make sure that they plan for. They need to have necessary food, water, and medications, but also have the necessary contacts and resources to assist them during an emergency or disaster. So the first step for the older adult in becoming prepared is to know what resources they have. And to be able to know what resources they have, a plan is essential. The Red Cross recommends to make a plan to prepare for a disaster or an emergency. This plan must include the following. Must include out-of-state contacts in case that the local communication is down. Escape routes and meeting places with family and friends. Must know where the safe place in the home is if they need to shelter in place. They need to plan to keep all their vital information or copies of them in a plastic bag in an easy location to grab them in a hurry. Have numbers and other information accessible for emergency services and state and community resources in case of a disaster emergency. Have a packed emergency kit accessible and ready to use and grab if they need to leave quickly. And consider the use of a cell phone or a wearable emergency button to assist them in emergency. An emergency kit can be extremely helpful for an older adult, especially if they have to shelter in place. Now, there are many reasons why an older adult would have to shelter in place. One of the main reasons for an older adult is mobility. As adults age, it may become harder for them to be mobile, and they may have increased difficulty moving about and getting also the resources to help them evacuate the area if they need to. So an emergency kit is essential. So let's look at some things that need to be in the emergency kit. Like we had talked about before, having the copies of medical important information in a leak-proof bag is essential. An extra amount of medications, a week to 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a maximum. A week, I would say, minimum for having extra medications handy. Extra food and water, that should probably be a little bit extended out to a week and a half to a week. A blanket, a flashlight, and then medical items such as hearing aid batteries, glucometer and the strips, those sort of things. A first aid kit. And I found that the CDC has a great page, a great link to a page called www.ready.gov that really helps the older adult know what things should be in their emergency kit. Now that we went over what should be some basics in planning an emergency kit, let's look at certain emergencies and disasters that specifically affect the older adult more intensely. Extreme heat. We're going to break these down and just talk about these individually. So extreme heat. Older adults are more prone to taking medications that alter their ability to sweat and cool down. They are also not as able as a younger adult to hold water, and they can become dehydrated very quickly. So having adequate fluid replacement sports drinks is important. Retreating to a cooler area, a basement or a public place, or cool clothing and a cooling towel would be important for an older adult. A tornado. Older adults may have difficulty in mobility. Because of this, it's crucial for an older adult to shelter in place at home. They need to stay away from windows. Locate a safe place in the house. Common areas are closets, basements, under stairs, and bathrooms so that they can shelter safely in place in their home. A hurricane. Mobility again is a concern for some older adults. They need to arrange to evacuate with a close family or family friend or a family member or neighbor. If they're not and they have to shelter in place, having the emergency kit will be helpful, and they will need to include at least 3 to 4 days of extra drinking water and food and medications in case of a hurricane. A hurricane, another thing to think about is the amount of water. So having a sump pump may be helpful as well. And with water, we think about flooding. Similar to hurricanes, there is a large amount of water that can fill the home. One thing that I found interesting for an older adult is they can fill the bathtub for water in advance if they have to shelter in place. To be able to have water to flush toilets or to take a bath with. A sump pump in the basement, maybe, or the lower level of their house may be beneficial. In the case of a fire, the older adult may have cognitive and sensory impairments that can put them at a higher risk, where they may not realize the fire is happening. You ensure all smoke alarms and CO2 detectors are functioning, replace batteries annually. If in the event of a wildfire, evacuate. If they're not in the line of the fire, then keep all of the windows and doors shut to help keep smoke out, and have important documents ready to grab and go. Loss of power, a lot of things on these other disasters and emergent situations go along with having a loss of power. Let's talk about some extreme cold. Since extreme cold can affect older adults more intensely, increasing the amount of warmer clothes can help. If there's a loss of power, trying to heat the home in another way, such as a fireplace, but not utilizing gas stoves or kerosene heaters without proper ventilation. So really a fireplace would be the best, or just using your own heat, body heat, and putting on more layers are helpful. In the case of an earthquake, mobility problems can place issues for an older adult and increases their risk for falls and injury. So if an earthquake is happening, one thing that they can do is lower themselves to the floor and then go somewhere where they can be, under a table or such like that, where they can cover themselves and cover their head. And just stay in that one place for as long as possible until the earthquake is over. There may be aftershocks as well. Another thing, which is something that's happened more recently, is talking about global pandemics. So the older adult is an increased at-risk population for global pandemics. Since the older adult's immune system responses decrease as they age, a global pandemic can be life-threatening for them. Some things that can help is for them to stay at home so they're not exposed. Have a week's worth of food and water. Listen to the news to gain more information on the resources. Outreach to family, neighbors, friends to help get them food and the resources that they need. And obtain adequate sleep, nutrition, and hydration to help keep their immune system working as well as possible. And the last thing we think about is falls. Fall without the ability to get up. Now, falls are the primary problem for older adults and can be life-threatening. One thing is they should look for and fix and remove any items that can contribute to a fall. You can see information specifically about preventing falls in my Don't Let Gravity Bring You Calamity video. Have the important documents ready to go, so if emergency personnel need to take them to the hospital, it's easy to grab. And then a suggestion is carrying a cell phone or having a wearable emergency button present on the body at all times or nearby to where they can reach it. That can help in case they fall, to where they wouldn't have to be laying on the ground for days with nobody knowing that they had fallen. All right, thanks for taking some time with me today and exploring the information regarding an older adult and emergency preparedness. Go ahead and pause this video and copy the link in the description below to access the post test. Good luck! So being prepared is essential for the older adult in emergency or a disaster, and there are quite a few sites that are great for accessing information and resources to help older adults in a disaster, and those are listed below.